I have a 1998 Dodge Ram, and it has a small leak in the radiator right here where it's crimped together. So I'm going to have to replace the radiator. You'll want to check the radiator cap, make sure that it's cooled down, make sure the vehicle's cool before you work on it. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this lower radiator hose so I can drain all the coolant out. So there's a hose clamp on here, and I've slid that back, and now I'm going to take the hose off. And you'll want to put something under the vehicle to catch as much of the fluid as possible. And now I'm going to remove the upper radiator hose. Just slide the hose clamp back and then remove the hose. Next, I'm going to remove the upper transmission coolant line. It's this one right here. It's a good idea to plug that or cover it up so you don't get any contaminants in it. Next, I'm going to disconnect the lower transmission coolant line. This one is a little different, and you can see how it spins. You have to use a special tool to remove this. This is a quick disconnect tool set, and they come in various sizes. I think this is the one we want to use. So what you have to do is just open this up. There's a slot on one side, and put it over the line coming out of the radiator. So it just slides over there, and then push it into here, the connector. There's spring clips in there. When you push it in, it'll push those open so it can slide off. Here's what that hose fitting looks like. You can see the 4 spring clips in there, and they have to be pushed open to slide off the fitting on the radiator. Since I'm replacing the radiator anyway, I removed the fitting to give you a better idea how to disconnect this. When the hose is pressed onto this fitting, these spring clips go over this ring and they lock on this side. So when you're pushing that tool in here, it forces those spring clips open so they can go over this ring. If you don't have one of these quick disconnect tools, you can take a piece of hose, a hard plastic hose, and cut a slit in it to fit over the fitting, and then use that to force it apart. Next, I'm going to remove the windshield wiper fluid reservoir. So let's take a large screwdriver and put it behind the reservoir, between it and the fan shroud, and just pry out a little bit, and then it should pop up. Just a couple little tabs here, if you can see those that go in a hole in the shroud. When you push those away, you can lift it up. If you need to remove the radiator overflow tank, it comes off the same way. Just put a large screwdriver in the back, pry it away, and then just lift straight up. I don't think I need to remove this one. I'm just going to disconnect the hose from the radiator. Next, I'm going to push the fan shroud back. So I need to remove the mounting bolts. There's 2 on each side, one on top and bottom, and same on the other side. Next, I'm going to move these two covers from either side, and there's just a couple of these plastic type rivets in here. I'm just going to pop those out. Now I have these little plastic rivets out. These covers are both loose. So next I'm going to remove these two rubber fittings on each side. Now that the bolts are out of the top, the bottom of the radiator just sits in little recesses in the frame, so it should just come straight out. Next, I'm going to get the new radiator ready to put in. There's some rubber grommets that go on the bottom over these pins, and these are what go into the recesses in the frame, and there'll be one on each side. On each side of the radiator are these two spots where the fan shroud mounts on, and there's these clips that go on there. The extruded side will go to the bottom like this, and they just slide in place. And there will be two on each side to mount the fan shroud to the radiator. On the top of the radiator, on either side, there's these slots that these rubber grommets go in, and that's what mounts it to the radiator support. When you put the radiator back in, the little rubber grommets on the bottom will go in these recesses and the radiator support right here. On the new radiator, you may see a cut like this, one on top and one on bottom. This is an expansion cut that allows the radiator to expand and contract as it heats and cools. And you can see here on the bottom of the radiator where it fits into that hole in the frame there. Now I'm going to replace the top two bolts that bolt the radiator to the radiator support. Next, I'm going to put these covers back in place, and I'm going to use some new plastic fasteners. You can get these at most automotive stores, and they just press right in. Next, I'm going to put the shroud back in place and then replace the 4 bolts, 2 on either side, top and bottom. Now I'm going to replace the hose for the overflow tank. To replace the windshield washer fluid reservoir, there's a tab on the bottom that goes into that slot, and then on the top there's these 2 tabs that go in these slots. Just line them up and push down and it will pop in. The lower transmission line should slip over the fitting on the new radiator and just snap into place. Make sure it's fully seated. On the upper transmission coolant line, I put some Teflon tape on the new fitting just to make sure it doesn't leak. It's a good idea to flush out your coolant system and use fresh antifreeze and distilled water to fill it up. Inspect your upper and lower radiator hoses for damage and replace if needed. And then slide the lower radiator hose back on and replace the hose clamp. And last I'm going to put on a new radiator cap.